Thank you everyone for joining. Today, we'll be talking about analytical thinking interviews and how to prepare for them with AI. My name is Ben Ares. I am currently spending a lot of time helping product managers get ready for specifically product sense and analytical thinking interviews. I teach a course on Maven that's focused on getting ready for those interviews. And I also put out a lot of content, free content like this, to try to help people get ready for the interviews. And what I wanted to do today is show you all how you can take a lot of the frameworks and the guidelines that I use to get a lot of reps with AI to get ready for your interviews. So the ideal audience for this talk is probably product managers that are getting ready for interviews at companies that use meta style analytical thinking interviews. Some companies also call them execution interviews. So yeah, I hope this is going to be really fun and useful. Let me just share. All right. So there's going to be elements of today's lightning lesson that are going to be presentation-like in nature with some slides, and then there's going to be demos. So the demos are always more fun, but I think it's hard to contextualize the demos without understanding a little bit of the context. So some housekeeping as we get started. This will be recorded and emailed to you after the fact. Please, feel free to keep your video off, stay muted if you don't mind, just to make this as good as possible for everyone else. And I'm gonna go pretty quickly. I just naturally kind of talk fast, but you'll be able to go back and rewatch all of this on the recording to absorb it. And then at the end, we'll save some time for Q&A. We're gonna use the chat for that, ideally. I've learned sometimes people can get a little verbose with the microphone, so just to be mindful of everyone's time, we'll use the chat. And hopefully at this point, we're settling in. We're going to spend some time talking about context for analytical thinking interviews and just like how I think about AI Copilot usage to get ready for them. And then I'll do a demo in how AI can be used to simulate a candidate for an analytical thinking interview. Historically, this was only something I would demo in Claude, but I'm really excited I've finally gotten ChatGPT working as well. So we'll do kind of like a ChatGPT voice demo of how it can work as well. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So at a high level, for those of you who haven't joined my product sense version of this lightning lesson, you could think of different kinds of interviews as really being you could just like expect very different things based on early stage all the way to big tech. There's just different things they look for. Like in early stage, I've been the first PM at 3 different startups. It's a lot about fit. It's about talking to like everyone who's basically not a PM because there are no PMs. So like your go-to-market partners, the designers, the engineers. And it's really about just like, are you the right person for this role at this stage for this exact job right now? And then as you get into like big tech, it goes less from like that kind of perfect person for the perfect job right now kind of thing to more of like general evaluation in a more consistent way that is like structured and reduces bias. And that's mostly where we're going to spend our time today, is talking about those big tech interviews. So just a quick story. So I was a product manager for a little under a couple of years at back then still Facebook, now Meta. And when I was getting ready for my interviews and they told me I had to get ready for product sense and analytical thinking interviews, I was like, I have no idea how to get ready for those. So I went online and I found this channel on YouTube called Exponent, which I will plug. It's got great videos. And the way that I ended up preparing for my interviews is I would pick a video that had a question. And then the moment the question was asked, I would pause the video and then I would start working through that question on my own on paper just to see how far I could get in my mind. And then the moment I got stuck or the moment I felt like I was kind of like, man, like I'd really love to see how this person in this video did, because obviously they're really good at it. I would then unpause the video and then just watch kind of like as far as I could before I felt confident, maybe continuing on my own. And I did that with probably 10 different mock interviews that were recorded. And that was the best that was available for me then. I never used a coach. I never used a course. I did one mock with one person. And ultimately, though, I think that the thing that allowed me to build my confidence for the interviews to ultimately land that job was getting reps, working through real questions and watching people work through them. But the problem with that was that there were sometimes decisions that were made by the person who was going through the mock, and I just wanted to understand why they did that. Like, why didn't you do it another way? Or like, what's the thinking behind this way of setting a goal or defining a metric or picking a North Star or evaluating a trade-off, et cetera. And obviously, I couldn't ask that to the video, so I just had to make a bunch of my own assumptions and fill in the gaps. So I've been thinking about that problem for the last like 5 years, and just like how people who are getting ready for these exact kind of interviews today could potentially get way more reps if they just had the right frameworks in front of them. So I've been putting a lot of content out there. If you saw my guest post on Lenny's last week, I'm sure you were able to like digest a lot of my thinking here. But if you haven't, I would strongly recommend getting carving out some time and reading that, because it's my best effort to try to distill all this framework into a single post about how to approach analytical thinking interviews. Um, the basic idea is that analytical thinking interviews are questions like measure success for Spotify, or set a goal for Reels, or define success for DoorDash. And the kind of outline for that I generally recommend following for these interviews is to start with some assumptions and walking through a game plan, talk about the product rationale a bit, then get into a metrics framework, talk about goal setting for a team, and then evaluate trade-offs is like the high level, happy path. Sometimes it goes a little less linearly than this, but that's the basic idea. And the post goes into like the kinds of assumptions you might want to make, how to think about defining your product rationale, starting with like context, going all the way to like, company and product alignment. And then I know this is a lot to digest, so definitely not expecting you to read all this right now, but the post really talks about how to like figure out the ecosystem players, what's in it for each ecosystem player to participate, key actions they take, how you can define metrics that describe and track the key actions being taken, ultimately converting all of that into a North Star metric, and then identifying any drawbacks to that metric that can then give you the ability to set guardrail metrics that keep your growth healthy and sustainable. And then working your way backwards from the North Star metric to determine which ecosystem player you might focus on when setting goals, and then picking a goal. That's the basic idea. And then at the end, there's like also my framework around trade-offs. We'll have a little bit less time to talk about trade-offs today. But just wanted you all to know that is a resource that's out there and available, and I'd strongly encourage you to check it out if you just want more like broad context on these interviews. And I've separately also done a lightning lesson just called How to Ace Analytical Thinking PM Interviews, which is a full hour deep dive into my frameworks here. So we're not going to talk about all that stuff here. It's more about the AI piece. Okay. So beyond watching YouTube videos and just working your way through them, what are the other options you have for getting ready for interviews? You could work with a coach. I do some of that on the side, although it's very time consuming, so I do less of it these days. You can do peer practice, and then you can work with an AI copilot. And as far as I'm aware, I think my AI copilot is the best one. I'm biased, but I just have not seen anyone else kind of like spend as much time, honestly, tinkering with materials and instructions as I have. So we're going to talk about that one today. And the basic workflow for using the AI copilot is going to mirror kind of what I did when I was getting ready for my Facebook interviews back in the day with YouTube videos. So the idea is you pick a question, you work through it on your own, then you pose that same question to the AI copilot and ask it to work through it as a candidate. So you kind of want to see like, okay, like what'd you come up with, right? And then you want to compare what you came up with on your own and what the AI came up with on. And then if there's big deltas between what you did and what it did, you could ask it to like tell you more about its thinking, and then it can do that. And all the rationale for its decisions will ultimately be based on the materials and the instructions that I provide. So what you then want to do is you want to basically be like, okay, like it did something differently. I actually like the way it did that better than I did it. So I'm going to internalize that. And then next time I work through one of these questions, I'm going to do it the way it did it. Okay. And then if you get enough reps, I recently helped someone land an offer at Meta. They took my April or May cohort. And they did, I believe, 50 reps with the AI copilot to work through 50 different questions to get ready for their interviews. I think it was roughly split between product sense and analytical thinking, so maybe like 25 and 25. But the AI copilot was critical for them to just get confident with the frameworks and ultimately land the offer. So I have strong reasons to believe this works well. Um, there are two other ways, and we're mostly going to talk about how to use AI to play the candidate, but you can also use AI to be the interviewer, or to be a coach that scores your filled out templates. We'll talk about the templates in a minute when I do the demo, but I'm not going to demo all of this today because we just don't have enough time. But if you wanted, you could ask the AI to play the role of the interviewer. I'll be the candidate. And then I want you to ask me a question. And then it's like going to play that. And then you get to basically um, provide your answers at every step of the way and just see how it responds. The other way is for it to behave as a coach. So you could fill out a template, download a PDF, upload the PDF, and then ask it to score it. Um, by the way, I see there's some questions being asked in the chat. I'm going to have a hard time talking and paying attention to the chat while we do this. So I'll just, maybe we can hold questions till the end if you don't mind. Or I just want to see your questions. And then the demo that we're going to walk through is as a candidate. So you can ask the AI basically, how would you measure success for this product, and just see what it does. So now we're going to switch into demo mode. So the first demo I want to show you is going to be in Claude. Okay, so here I've set up a special project. It's got some project knowledge, files. I separately sell access to the materials to create this Copilot to help me make this thing I do sustainable. So if you want to support me in my journey as a creator, you can buy the Copilot and then use this. So here in this case, you can say, like, how would you measure success for, just pick Airbnb. And isn't that wonderful that Claude is going through maintenance during this demo? It's fantastic. So you can see that Copilot starts by stating assumptions, just like I mentioned in my framework. You know, we're not going to get into all the specific content in this session right now. But generally speaking, I think these assumptions make sense to me. Then it walks me through its game plan for how it wants to spend time in the interview. And the way I've built the Copilot is it also keeps track of how long it takes to say things, because time management is a really critical piece of these interviews. And here it can say, yeah, that sounds good. In real interviews, by the way, this is kind of what happens. Candidates usually do probably 90% of the talking in a lot of these interviews. And interviewers are, if the interviews are getting the signal they need, they're mostly just kind of saying like, yeah, that sounds good, keep going, that makes sense. Like they're not really like probing too much if they're getting what they need, right? So here, the Copilot's going to talk about what Airbnb is, stage of maturity, how it makes money, key competitors, and kind of unique advantages. And then ultimately, it's going to finish with a mission statement that will be helpful later in this exercise. So we can say, yeah, that makes sense. Next, it's going to get into ecosystem players. So what I want to pull up while this is kind of working through it is my temp. Why is that not working? Here we go. Let me just hide this for a second. So this template's, by the way, available for free online for everybody. So the Copilot has basically internalized this framework. So it works through the product rationale. It goes through ecosystem players. That's the part we're about to cover in a second here. Then it defines North Star metrics. It's going to help figure out guardrail metrics, pick a goal for the team. And then I don't think we're going to have time for trade-off navigation now, but you can see kind of how it went about this. So it started by identifying ecosystem players. We've got guests, hosts, and Airbnb as a platform. The value proposition to guests, key actions for realizing value, and then ultimately came up with some ecosystem health metrics. Same with hosts, same with Airbnb. And then once it does all that, it can come up with a North Star metric. Okay. I know I'm going really fast, but this is kind of on purpose. Because I want to show you how someone can really get 50 reps, right? With this, if they do this thoughtfully. So here it came up with a North Star metric of total nights booked per week, came up with some strengths, some drawbacks, and then it came up with some guardrail metrics that allow us to keep the ecosystem healthy as our total nights booked per week grows. Okay. Um, now, so that's basically how Claude does this. And you can actually literally copy and paste the things that the Copilot generates into the template to compare. So if you were to work your way through this question, how to measure success for Airbnb on your own, you can make a copy of this template. It's publicly available. You could print it out or type into it, state assumptions, walk through your product rationale, fill all this out as much as you want, set some metrics, critique it, set guardrails, and then you could work your way towards a oh yeah, sorry, it's going to set a team goal. Work your way towards goals. And then you just compare the approaches and ask questions. So this is the basic idea of how to use AI to get ready for the interviews by getting a lot of these reps and comparing your approach. The thing I'm really excited about at the moment, just in general, is ChatGPT voice mode. I use it all the time. And for a long time, I was really struggling to get this level of kind of like experience created inside of ChatGPT. The main reason for that is my instructions for the projects are very long and very specific. And ChatGPT's character limit for project instructions is 8,000 characters, whereas Claude's has no problem handling my 13,000 character instructions for at least the Product Sense Copilot. So I wasn't able to get this working in ChatGPT for a long time. But then I realized I can just use a new chat. So what I mean by that is apparently there's like a lot less restrictions on just like character limits for a new chat, as well as putting in project knowledge materials. So what I want to do now is show you how you can use ChatGPT. Let me go back to my slides. How you can use ChatGPT to actually hear what it might sound like for someone to say all of these things in a more conversational way, and have a back and forth conversation in a more natural language way. For example, if one of those metrics or the North Star metric or a goal didn't really make sense to you as you're working with the Copilot, then you get to basically ask it verbally, like, hey, like it didn't really make sense to me. Can you define that like way more specifically? Or can you tell me how you got there, and just say it out loud? You could literally do this while you're going for a walk, like, in the park or something, right? It's way more valuable than just having to be at your desk. You could still use Claude to do it at your desk, but if you want voice, you could do it too. Um, so I'm pulling up a chat thread with ChatGPT where I've just preloaded it with the ChatGPT instructions and the files, and now it's basically saying like, go ahead and hit me with a question when you're ready. So I'm just going to do this for about 5 minutes, maybe a little less than that, just so you can kind of hear how the ChatGPT agent works through these questions verbally, and then we can open up for some Q&A as I finish up. All right, and I'm just gonna monitor the chat here for a second to make sure that the voice is gonna come through. But hey, ChatGPT, I would like to ask you how you would measure success for Airbnb.
Great question. Let's start by laying out some upfront assumptions to ensure we're on the same page. For this exercise, I'll assume that we're focusing on Airbnb's core home sharing business and the US market, unless you'd like to specify otherwise. I'll also assume that we're considering both hosts and guests as key ecosystem players. Does that sound like a good starting point? If so, I'll walk you through the overall game plan for our discussion. This initial part should take about a minute.
Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. So here's the game plan for how I'll approach measuring success for Airbnb. First, I'll start by reviewing the product's landscape and its reason for existing. Then I'll identify the key stakeholders or ecosystem players and outline the primary metrics that reflect their engagement and value. After that, I'll define a North Star metric that captures overall success and identify any guardrails to ensure balanced growth. Finally, I'll set some specific team goals that align with that North Star metric. Does that sound like a solid approach to you?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great, let's dive into the product rationale. Airbnb is essentially a platform that connects hosts who have available space with guests looking for unique accommodations. The product solves the problem of finding affordable, diverse, and often more personalized lodging options compared to traditional hotels. This is important because it provides travelers with more choices and often more affordable options, while also allowing hosts to monetize their extra space. Airbnb's unique positioning comes from its vast global network, user generated reviews, and the variety of listings. Now that we have that in mind, I'll move on to identifying the key ecosystem players and their metrics. Does that sound good?
Yeah, go for it.
Great. So let's break down the key ecosystem players for
Actually, hold
Airbnb.
on. Did you state a mission statement for the product?
Good catch. Let me quickly add that in. A succinct mission statement for Airbnb could be something like to create a world where anyone can belong anywhere. This captures Airbnb's core purpose of connecting people and providing a sense of belonging through travel. Now that we have that mission statement in place, let's move on to identifying those key ecosystem players and their metrics.
Got it. Okay, go ahead.
Perfect. So for Airbnb, the key ecosystem players are guests, hosts, and the platform itself. For guests, the primary value proposition is finding unique, affordable accommodations that offer a more personal experience than hotels. For hosts, it's the ability to earn income from their extra space and connect with travelers. And for Airbnb as a platform, the value lies in facilitating these connections and driving revenue through service fees. We'll measure guest success by metrics like booking frequency, average nights booked, and guest satisfaction ratings. For hosts, we can look at the number of active listings, occupancy rates, and host retention. For Airbnb itself, metrics like total bookings, revenue, and platform growth will be
Yeah, let
key.
me interrupt you for a second. Let's just focus on the guests and the host for a second. Could you help me better understand the exact definitions of the metrics that you stated for each?
Absolutely. Let's break it down a bit more. For guests, one key metric would be booking frequency, which we can define as the average number of bookings a guest makes over a certain period, like a year. Another important metric is the average nights booked, which measures how many nights on average each guest stays per booking. Guest satisfaction ratings would come from the reviews that guests leave after their stay, typically measured on a 5-star scale. For hosts, one key
Hold
metric would
on.
be
Would you care at all about tracking like the overall number of guests or anything that has to do with like the raw count of guests using the platform?
absolutely the overall number of guests using the platform is definitely important. That raw count helps us understand the scale of Airbnb's user base and its growth over time. It gives a sense of market penetration and overall popularity. It can also help in forecasting and planning,
Yeah,
as well
totally.
as
But what's the actual metric you would use?
got it. The actual metric for that would be something like the total number of active guests, which we could define as the number of unique users who have completed at least one booking within a specific time frame, like the past year. This metric gives a clear picture of how many guests are actively using the platform and can be tracked over different periods to see trends and growth.
Got it. Okay. Can you keep going?
Absolutely. So for hosts, in addition to the number of active listings, another important metric would be the host retention rate. This can be defined as the percentage of hosts who continue to list their space over a certain period, say year over year. This helps measure.
Okay. I think you get the idea. Th th this way of engaging with AI when I first started playing with it was honestly kind of blowing my mind. I started having very interesting conversations with ChatGPT, asking how it would measure success for all various kinds of things. Um, and if I ever felt like it was deviating from the approach that I believe it should follow for at least for the interviews, I would ask it why it did that, or and then make some tweaks. As you can see, there's still some elements like it missed the mission statement. I would consider the ChatGPT side of this as a more like a beta product at this moment because I still have some tinkering to do with it. But overall, it kind of honors the high level structure of my framework, and I think it can be a really interesting way to get more reps with the material while not being stuck to your desk or something like that. Okay, a couple more things I'll cover, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So the first thing people might be asking is like, why would I not use AI in real interviews? And this is obviously something that's, unfortunately becoming common. I understand why it's happening, but I think there's a few reasons why it's not a good idea, or at least why I discourage using AI during real interviews. First one is the obvious one. It's unethical. It's you're basically cheating, right? That's assuming it does a really good job. The second reason is that it's inauthentic. So the goal of job searches and interviews, from my perspective, having been through a bunch of them on both sides of the table, is to just find the right fit. So if someone is showing up to an interview inauthentically, it's decreasing the chances of finding a good fit. And I think that's not in either party's best interest. The third piece here is it can hallucinate. Like you notice, like it missed the mission statement. So if you're going to be relying on AI during a real interview and it misses something and then you don't catch that it missed it, then you're going to miss it too, in which case you're going to sound dumb in an interview. And obviously you don't want that. And then the third thing is, or the fourth thing rather, is this isn't future proof. And what I mean by that is I think that as the technology available to candidates is improving, I think companies are going to get more savvy in their ability to detect the usage of AI. And it's already starting to happen a little. I've talked to a bunch of people at companies that are starting to notice people saying things that sound very AI generated, or sometimes people are wearing glasses and like the reflection on the glasses is showing like Claude or ChatGPT during a real interview, which like is a terrible look for candidates. So yeah, I would say for these reasons, like it's just not like a sustainable future-proof strategy. So I really do recommend using it for practice, but not for live interviews. Um, Start dropping any of your questions in the chat. We're gonna do Q&A in a moment here. But before that, I want to do a quick plug for my boot camp. So basically, if you want to go deeper on product sense and analytical thinking preparation, I'm running my last cohort until October, starting Tuesday of next week. It's positioned as a 3 week course, but it's really kind of like a 2.5-ish week course. It's about 14 hours of commitment over that time frame, which is, not a little bit, but it's also not too much to be overwhelming. I think you can do this, and I have plenty of students who do this while holding a job. If you are fully on the market right now looking for your next thing, I think it's gonna be way easier for you to probably make time for this. Um, we work our way live through multiple questions, product sense, and analytical thinking. You get access to my co-pilot as part of it, so it's bundled in the price of the course. And then you get access to me for questions and one-on-one huddles. You can also get $100 off the course with a promo code Lenny's List if you want to do that. So that'll bring the price down from 1,500 to 1,400. You can go to the course page, which I'll send out as a link after this if you want to take a closer look at the syllabus for the course, as well as what people are saying, student testimonials and such. And the chance that you have your phone out and you're on your computer at the moment and you want to scan any of these QR codes so that you could easily access any of the things that I just mentioned. My Maven course is on the left. AI Practice Copilot is on the right. I sell that through a platform called PayHip. So if you've never heard of PayHip before, don't be sketched out. It's real and very legitimate. Okay. I'm now going to start looking at the Q&A here. So thank you to Zoe for sharing the link to that article. I talked about how you get access to the Copilot. How do you get access to the Product Sense Lightning lesson? So if you go to my page, so basically go to maven.com/ben-eras, and that's going to give you both my course link, but also links to previous Lightning lessons, as well as today's Lightning lesson once the recording's available. And specifically, I would recommend the talk about practicing for Product Sense PM interviews with AI. There's one that I recorded before that, which is more generic. And then if you want my frameworks around how to just generally approach analytical thinking PM interviews, there's a talk about that here as well. Okay, so the question, if the analytical thinking question is about trade-offs or RCA, I'm not sure what RCA is, or estimation, can I use the same framework? So my Lenny post goes a little bit into, I think that's probably root cause analysis is what you mean. Root cause analysis questions, also known as debugging questions, are outside of the scope of what I've trained the Copilot to do because they're becoming way less common, if I'm honest. Same with estimation questions. There's some very small number of companies that still use estimation questions, like how many gumballs fit in a bus or whatever. But I think mostly this is for goal setting and trade-off kind of questions. Someone's asking, I find that the AI Copilot just agrees with follow-ups and changes its direction. Is that what we're supposed to do in an interview, or are we supposed to provide rationale for why we picked? Yeah, I think the response here is spot on. Yeah, we do need to use discretion and use some critical thinking. I would say if the interviewer nudges you, so like if I ask you, hey, like what about top level guest metrics? Hint, 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 right? I think if you ignore that question, you're basically ignoring a nudge. So my job as an interviewer is to get the signal I need. So if I'm missing it, I'm like, maybe they're nervous, maybe they sometimes you miss stuff. So I'm going to ask it explicitly. Um, if you pick up on the hint and then you basically, oh yeah, thanks for catching that. I missed it. You're right. We should consider that, right? That's one way to pick up a nudge, and I don't think that you'll be penalized for that. However, at decision points in the interview, for example, setting a North Star metric. Okay, so you set a North Star metric. That's a very opinionated thing to do during the interview. If the interviewer asks you, oh, like what about this other thing, and you just be like, oh yeah, you're right. I should probably do that, right? Like that's not a good thing to do in an interview. So you do want to be able to defend your thinking without getting defensive, but you just want to think about the rationale for the decision that you're making or the thing you're stating. And if the interviewer's nudge or intervention causes you to question the kind of like the principles that led you to make the decision, and you realize you made a mistake, then there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, actually, let me take a few seconds and think about this again from a fresh perspective. But yeah, I wouldn't just accept the nudges from the interviewer as a sign that you're wrong or that you should do what they say. You do want to be kind of like assertive in the conversation. Um, if everyone's following this framework in a real interview, it may be harder and harder to differentiate candidates. What are other elements of responses? I'll stop sharing my screen now. What are other elements of, when I do that, the chat moves. Where's the chat? There it is. Okay. What are the other elements of the responses you would rate as a strong product analytical sense interview? So being able to do what I just covered and follow the framework that I wrote about in the Lenny post and in my talks and the template in a 35-minute time box while bringing the interviewer along for the ride in a way that they understand and follow your thinking is in itself differentiated. Okay, so in other words, these frameworks are not a cheat code. It's like there's no way to cheat in these interviews. And that's why I feel like ethically comfortable doing the kind of coaching I do, is because you can get the frameworks and you can get the guidelines and the templates and really get a lot of reps. But when game day comes around and you're on a real interview with a real product manager on the other side who's looking to get real signals in a way that they can follow and that makes sense to them all within 35 minutes, that's literally that's what differentiates you. So that's probably my advice is like everything else I've recommended is the answer to that question, and just doing it within 35 minutes. The Copilot description says that the use case of AI as an interviewer and interview coach is in beta. Would you recommend that now or not yet? Yeah, like they work. You will get feedback on your submissions, and you will get the AI to behave like an interviewer. I would say the use of AI as a candidate is probably at like a 9 out of 10 from my satisfaction right now. Like I think it's kind of in the very optimization phase of the experience for me as a builder. But I'd say that the use case for AI as a coach and a use case for AI as an interviewer are probably closer to like like a 5 or a 6 out of 10 as far as like how ready they are. So I'm just not as like confident that they'll consistently be as good as I want them to be. But I still think that the use case of AI to simulate a candidate is really, really strong. And it's what I'm hearing people get a lot of value out of. How do you think about guardrails and countermetrics? Is there a standard approach? I would definitely like read my Lenny post and watch my lightning lesson about how to just generally approach analytical thinking interviews. I don't think it's like an AI specific question because I talk a lot about setting guardrails and countermetrics. Are the materials you put into Claude available for purchase as a standalone? Yes. So you can go to my course page. There's a link on my course page. I will also share a link here in the chat for people that want to go check it out more directly. And then I will also include this in the follow-up email along with the recording when this goes out. Is there a possibility to ask for a different question if you can't answer it? Or is it possible to suggest a domain where you're more comfortable? Like, if the interviewer asks you, how would you measure success for Airbnb? And you're like, hey, actually, can we talk about, like Spotify? I think that's probably not a good idea. You should answer the question they ask you. There's a reason they're asking you that question. Um, but if you're not familiar with the product or the domain, you could, like, if they ask you to measure success for a product that you're just not familiar with, um, then you could ask the interviewer, it's like, tell me more about this product. Like, I actually don't know too much about it, and I want to make sure that my knowledge of the product or the domain don't get in the way of my ability to get through this exercise. Um, and then they will tell you what they think you need to know about that product. And if you basically overlook an aspect of the product that they did not volunteer to you, then that is, and they penalize you for that, then that's kind of like not fair in my opinion, because that is penalizing you not for your analytical thinking interview skills, but for like the knowledge of a product that you just are not familiar with, this, which is something people generally shouldn't penalize you for. Um, Cool. Sorry for all the fast talking. Usually there's more questions. So I wanted to make sure we could cover more of them. I'm happy to hang if there's any other questions for another like minute or so, and then we could wrap up. I really hope this was helpful. Cool. Going once, twice. I can see people frantically typing. Uh, Awesome. All right. Well, it was a really, really fun time. I appreciate all of you joining. And yeah, best of luck with your preparation. And yeah, the answer to this last question that came in, is there any plan to have this Copilot in ChatGPT? That's what I demoed in the voice mode. It's not yet part of the materials that you get immediately upon buying the Copilot today. Those are going to be mainly the Claude materials. And I have a slightly separate modified set of materials for ChatGPT that I currently am in the process of putting in the hands of 5 to 10 kind of like beta testers that have bought my Copilot over the last 6 months to get their feedback on ChatGPT, so I can tinker with it a bit more before making it broadly available. But if that's kind of like a blocker for someone to buy the Copilot and they just don't want to use Claude out of principle or something like that, yeah, just like shoot me a note. And I could maybe make an exception for you. Okay. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.